Okay, guys, so we should be live. We are 7 minutes away from part 2 of this live training. If you can hear me, just let me know that you can hear me, and we'll get going in about 7 minutes. If you're watching the replay of this, just skip ahead. So if you're watching the replay, skip ahead about 7 minutes and you'll be able to start the lesson without having to wait, because a lot of you who were watching the replay yesterday were complaining that you had to wait 10 minutes when all you had to do was just skip ahead. But if you're watching live, welcome. Let me know that you can hear me okay, and just let me know that you can see the screen, that you can see everything and everything's working okay, and we'll get started in about 5 minutes. So let me just check my system to see if it's working okay. Hopefully it is. Fingers crossed. About 5 minutes. Yep, sounds as if it is working well. Excellent. Thank you to everybody. So Sunny, Humera, Chai. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names. Chaidiana, Mohua, Aram, Ibrahim, that's easy. Sunny, that's easy. Aram Preet, Amina, Jaya, Dr. Humra, Nazanin, Bandi, Ataya, and Michael, which is very, very easy to say. Thank you, Michael, for having such an easy name. And Satish and everybody. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Thank you to all the people who joined yesterday. I think about 50% of the people who joined the group, so about 15,000 people joined the group. I think about 7,500 or 8,000 of you watched the lesson, or at least that. And that's pretty amazing. That is unbelievable. So thank you very much. And normally when we do something like this, if you're just joining us live, we haven't started yet. We're starting in 5 minutes. But normally when we do this, we always have 1% of people who put negative comments or say something negative like that. It was pretty amazing yesterday that I didn't see one negative comment. Everybody was really happy. Everybody seemed to really benefit from it. So thank you to everybody for all the positive comments. It really makes it worthwhile, and just helps me, keeps me motivated if I see all the positive comments, and which is excellent. So thank you to all the people, and I'm glad that you found yesterday's session worthwhile. I think yesterday's session will change many of you and change how you think about the test and how you prepare for the test. And hopefully in a month or 2 months or 6 months, I'll be getting emails from you guys saying, that was the turning point for me. That was the reason why I got the scores that I needed, and now I'm moving to whatever country you want to move to. All right, so what time is it? 3 minutes. So we'll start in 3 minutes. It's 12:57, and we'll start in 3 minutes. And hello to everybody saying hello. I can't go through each of your names because there's so many of you, but thank you to everybody saying hello and all the nice things you're saying. So we've got 159 people live. So normally, yesterday we had just over 1,000 people live. It normally takes 5 minutes or so for Facebook to let everybody know that we're live and for everybody to get in. And of course, some people are late for whatever reason. So we've got a really good one coming up today and tomorrow. So this one is a very practical session. And we're going to be looking at samples and things. Well, I'm not going to give too much away. I'm not going to tell you everything that we're doing. You'll just have to wait. Okay, guys. So if you need to go and do anything, get yourself a drink or get yourself a piece of paper or notes or whatever you need to do, do that now, because we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Exela says pen and paper ready. Good. Yeah, it's a good idea when you're a really good technique is if you're watching any videos or books or anything like that, is to have buy a book, a notebook just for your IELTS preparation, and write things in your own words, not your own language. Use English, but things in your own words, because that often means that you'll not overconsume, because you don't want to be watching the same thing and making the same notes over and over again. And it also means that you have a reference, something you can review, and it also means that it's just easier to learn things when you put them into your own words. So it's a good way to do it. But not everybody learns in the same way, but that's how I like to do it, and a lot of my other students like to do it like that. Okay, so a couple of more minutes, guys, and then we'll begin. It's not quite time yet. I don't want to start before everybody gets in, or everybody who wants to be here. And hopefully the rain or the hailstones won't come today. If you go onto my Instagram, so Instagram is @pale_academy, I think. But if you look for IELTS Advantage on Instagram, you'll see some of the pictures that I that I posted yesterday about the snow. It's very strange to get snow here in April. A couple of people say, am I late? No, you're not late. We haven't started. As you can see on the screen, starting soon. So it's currently 1 p.m. So we'll get started. So hello to everybody. Welcome to this session, and let's get going. So what are we going to do in this session? So this is all about the key mistakes that stop you getting a 7 or above in your IELTS writing test. So let's look at the 5 key differences. Let's recap what we did yesterday. It's always a good idea to just review things very quickly before you move on to new stuff. So the 5 key differences that we looked at in yesterday's session were deep learning, learning things properly, not, trying to learn everything as quickly as possible without learning things properly. Knowing the real purpose of what you're doing. And we're going to talk about IELTS Writing Task 2 today. A lot of the stuff we'll be talking about the purpose of writing and the purpose of writing essays. And that's going to help us. So we'll be doing a lot of that today. The third thing we talked about was taking action. So not just consuming lots of information, but actually doing something, because, writing is a skill. Listening is a skill, reading is a skill, speaking is a skill. You have to do those things in order to improve them. Number 4, very, very important. People who seek criticism and want criticism and take action on that criticism are obviously the people who identify their weaknesses and are able to turn those weaknesses into strengths. That's one thing that we really focus on with our students, is pinpointing their exact weaknesses and turning those weaknesses into strengths. Just like if you went to the dentist, they wouldn't take out all of your teeth, or hopefully they wouldn't take out all of your teeth. They just identify the exact problems that you're having, and they might extract one tooth or give you one filling, but they wouldn't just, take out all your teeth. So it's about identifying those weaknesses, and you can only do that through criticism. And then finally, but very, very important, focus on the crucial few. Focus on the things that really matter, not the trivial many, not the things that have no impact on your score, because there is such a thing as mental fatigue. And obviously you want to be focusing on the things that get you higher scores. And a lot of that is what we're going to do today. We're going to help you understand what really matters when it comes to IELTS Writing Task 2, so that you can focus on those things and those things only. So my goal this week, let's look at what we're doing this week. Day 1, we already did that. So the key differences between students who fail and those that succeed. We just talked about that. Day 2, which is today, the 4 most common mistakes students make on the IELTS writing test. So these are things that I see every single day. And tomorrow, the 3 most crucial mistakes that have the biggest impact on your score. And my goal today is to show you the things that my team and I see every single day. So my team and I probably correct upwards of 100 essays, task 1, task 2, general training, academic, a day. and we see the same things over and over and over and over again. So we had a meeting with our team and we asked them, what are the common things that we see every single day? And that's what we're going to reveal to you today. And I guarantee that you're doing at least one of these things, if not all of them. And even if you're only doing one of these things, even one of the things could be the reason why you keep getting 6 or you keep getting 6.5. So if you're stuck at 6.5, this is a really, really important session for you. Also, if you've never done the test before, this is a really important session for you because it will help you avoid these common mistakes. And by fixing these common mistakes, you can increase by 1 whole band score. Not everybody will be able to do that, but generally that's what we see. When we identify those mistakes for people, they'll be able to jump from 6 to 7 or 6.5 to 7.5. So again, I like to reward people for joining us live. We have 455 people live. So the people joining us live, I want to reward you, and this is what we'll get. Guys, I've just noticed that a lot of you are asking questions. Obviously, I can't teach and answer questions at the same time. So if you just wait until the end, I'll be able to answer any questions, but I won't be able to answer them in the middle of teaching. It's not like a normal class. It's an online class like that. So I'll look at any answers to any questions you have. I'm hoping to serve you at the highest possible level at the end by answering any questions. And I'm going to give you a free ebook download showing you the main differences between the band scores with real student samples. So what I've got is a PDF ebook with several different student sample essays on it. Some of them are 5, some of them are 5.5, some of them are 6, some of them are 6.5, so that you can look at them and see the actual differences between them. So I'm going to give you that at the end, but only to the people who stay to the end. I'm also going to give you a free ebook download showing you how to improve your vocabulary. But guys, this is only for people who join us live. If you're watching the replay of this, please don't email me and ask me, can I re-upload it and do all of those things take time. I want to dedicate my time to helping people prepare for the IELTS test. I don't want to deal with people who spend time on admin stuff when I could be just helping people. So this is just for the people that join us live. Okay, so we looked at this slide yesterday, but it's a very, very, very interesting slide. So this is official data from IELTS. All right, so IELTS record obviously all the test scores, and these are the worldwide mean test scores for men and women. So what we're going to focus on today is this, writing. All right, both academic and general. Task 2 applies to both academic and general. But the average score is between 5.4 and 6 for average. So pretty poor, that's below what most people I deal with need. And it's well below. It's like 2 bands below what most people need. And what we're going to look at in this session are the key things that lead to a band 5.5 or a band 6 or a band 6.5. And this is the reason why my students achieve average scores of 2 bands above these official scores. Because what we do is we help them identify these key mistakes that they're making. We fix those key mistakes, and then they're able to get the scores that they need. Very, very simple. But before we go into looking at these 4 key mistakes, remember I was telling you a little story yesterday. So I was telling you that I decided to be a lawyer, and I was working very, very, very hard at university to get into the best university, and I got there. And then I worked very, very hard and got my dream job. And then I worked very, very hard in my dream job, and I managed to become a successful corporate lawyer working on billion-dollar deals. And then something terrible happened. So I didn't tell you what the terrible thing was, and I'm going to tell you that now. And it is relevant to your preparation. It is relevant to this lesson on how to improve your IELTS scores. So bear with me. So the terrible thing that happened, if you can guess, was this. So the 2008 global financial crisis. So this isn't me, but that's pretty much what I looked like most days during the 2008 global financial crisis. Because I was a corporate lawyer working on big deals. Most of those were related to, banking or getting finance from banks in some way, and that just dried up. So everybody in my department, pretty much everybody, lost their jobs. So after working extremely hard in high school, in university, studying for 6 years in order to become a lawyer, doing that much study, I was unemployed, fired, no more job. So I understand what you guys go through whenever you are, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. I understand what you guys are going through when you are putting it in this amount of study, not only in your IELTS test, but let's say you're a doctor or a nurse or an engineer or a lawyer, and you have studied and worked hard all your life. And then this IELTS test is in front of you, and it's the thing stopping you getting the score you need. So for me, it wasn't the IELTS test. It was a global financial crisis that devastated me. But I totally understand. And this is one of the reasons why I put in so much effort to make sure that my lessons are as good as they can be. And I help people at the highest possible level, because I understand what you're going through. I understand what it's like to work hard, but not be able to get what you want. So what I did, decided to become a teacher. So I went from a lawyer to an English teacher. So I packed my bags and I moved to Germany, and I got a job pretty quickly. I think the second day I was in Germany, I was talking to someone and they offered me a job as an English teacher. No qualifications, had never taught before, but they decided, yep, you can teach. And I was pretty good at it immediately. So I was a much better teacher than I was a lawyer. It was like I kind of kicked myself, and I was like, why haven't I not been doing this for a long time? So I loved teaching and decided that Asia would be a great place to teach, because there were great jobs there. It's a really interesting place. You can move around. You can visit different countries. It's a really fascinating place. And I ended up in Vietnam. And at the school I was teaching in Vietnam, there was only one teacher who taught IELTS. He was like the IELTS guy. Nobody else wanted to teach it. He was like the IELTS expert in the school I was teaching. But he was sick one day, and I was the only available teacher. So they said to me, you have to go and teach an IELTS class. I had never even heard of IELTS before, and I was responsible for 16 students. So I was going in to teach an IELTS class, and I had never even heard of IELTS before. I was a pretty good English teacher. I knew a lot about the language and how to teach and all of those different things, but I had no idea how to teach IELTS. And it was a disaster, a complete disaster. And I was really, really angry because the students, well, I'll tell you what happened. I was really angry at the school for allowing me to teach this class. And believe it or not, most of the schools really don't care if the person teaching an IELTS class knows anything about IELTS. They just want a body at the front of the class who is supposedly knows what they're doing. And as long as the students are paying the money, they don't really care. So I was pretty angry with the school for not giving me, the required training before I was able to teach that class. And also I was angry at the publishers for making such terrible books, because all I was looking at were pages in a book from the IELTS course in this book, and it was terrible. It was really difficult to understand. It didn't really help any, people understand what they had to do. And I was pretty angry with that. And I was angry at myself for not being able to help people, because the reason why you become a teacher is to help people. And if you can't help people, then, you don't feel very good about yourself. So how did a teacher who knew nothing about the IELTS test end up creating the most successful online course in the world? I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay. So I'm going to tell you all about that tomorrow in lesson 3. So let's get into the 4 common mistakes of writing task 2. I just noticed a couple of people said, one person said, stop telling me about your story. I don't want to hear about your story. To that person, feel free to log off. Feel free to not watch anymore. I'm trying to help you. Part of that story is relevant to your preparation, and I'm trying to help you for free. So if you don't like it, see you later. And for the people who do want to listen and do want to continue, you're going to really benefit from this, and I look forward to helping you. Okay, guys, so the 4 common mistakes for IELTS Writing Task 2. So the 4 things, these are not the common mistakes, but the 4 things that you will be judged on are task achievement. That's 25% of your total mark. That means, did you answer the question properly, basically. Coherence and cohesion, that's 25% of your mark. That means, is your writing clear, easy to understand? Is it linked together properly? Lexical resource, which is just a fancy name for vocabulary, which is 25% of your total mark. And grammatical range and accuracy, which is just another way of saying grammar, which is 25% of your mark. So what we're going to do is we're going to always keep these things in mind, because what we talked about yesterday was focusing on the crucial few, not the trivial many. Focusing on what actually matters. And you should always keep your mind on these 4 things. These are the same for task 2. Task 1, they're a little bit different. Speaking, they're different again. But for task 2, this is what you should be focusing on. Okay. So, number 1, most common mistake that we see this every single day, and this will help you pretty much instantly improve your writing, is developing your main ideas. So one thing that we see over and over and over again, and we do this every day, is tell people you're not developing your ideas properly. So let's talk about this. So many students believe that all you have to do is think of as many ideas as possible, write them on the page, and you're done. So it's interesting when you talk to new students and they say, I say, what are you really worried about? They say, I can't think of ideas. And idea development and idea generation, they're 2 different things. Idea generation is thinking of ideas. Idea development is taking those ideas and developing them properly. But most students think that you need like 7, 8, 9 different ideas for your essay. You don't need that number of ideas. So the sign of a high quality essay is not the quantity of ideas, but the quality of those ideas and how well they are developed. So I'll repeat that. The sign of a high quality essay is not the quantity of ideas, but the quality of those ideas and how well they are developed. What does development mean? So let's look at this. So think about the difference between speaking and writing for a moment. So think about the main differences between spoken communication and written communication. What are the main differences? So in the comments, let me know what you think. What do you think is one big difference between spoken communication and written communication? Obviously, one is, writing it down with using a pen and a piece of paper. The other one comes out of your mouth. But think about it from a communication standpoint. What is the difference between those things? It'd be interesting to see that in the comments. So just take a minute and try and think of one and write it in the comments. So there are many differences, but the most significant is that the reader can never ask follow-up questions. And they also can't rely on tone or facial expressions to understand meaning. So spoken communication is much, much easier than written communication. Because with spoken communication, the listener can ask you, what do you mean by that? Can you repeat the question? They can also listen to the tone of your voice, your facial expressions. It's just much, much easier to communicate face to face when you're speaking to someone. But with writing, there's a lack of that. So writing is completely different from speaking in that way. And that is a huge significance. That has a huge significance on your writing and how you write. The meaning must be absolutely clear on the page, and there's no room for ambiguity. So ambiguity means the meaning is unclear. There might be several different interpretations. There might be several different meanings about what you say. But when you're when you're writing something, it must be crystal clear what you mean. And part of that is developing your main ideas. So for writing, the examiner will not be able to call you up and ask you what you meant. So I remember when I used to teach in classes, and I would look at somebody's writing and say, well, what do you mean by that? And they would say, oh, you know what I mean. I said, well, do you think the examiner will be able to, send you a text message or, call you up and say, what did you actually mean by this? You have to leave it all on the paper. So let's look at a sample. Let's look at a student sample. So let's look at this main body paragraph. Young children should not be allowed to use social media. This is because it harms them. It also stops them from developing properly. Social media is not good for young children because they have young brains that need to develop. For example, children should not be allowed to use Facebook. So this is an example of somebody who has not developed their main idea properly. So why is that? So it harms them. How does it harm them? You haven't explained that at all. So your main idea here seems to be it's not good for them, it harms them, but you haven't explained how that happens at all. So if you were speaking to someone, they'd be able to say, well, how does it harm them? But when you're writing, they can't ask you that. So you have to develop that idea. Next, they've put it stops them from developing. How? Is this the same as harms them? Or is this a new idea? Or are these two separate ideas? Is this the same idea? Is this a development? It's not clear at all what they're doing here. They have young brains. So is this, again, is this a new idea? Is this the same as this? Is this supporting this? They haven't really explained anything. So they've just put a bunch of ideas on the page and not really told the person reading it what it means. The example, Facebook, how is this related to the main point? So the main point, the example is so vague and it doesn't really refer to the main point that it doesn't really support it. All right, so how could we improve that? How could we make this better? So let's look at this one. Young children should not be allowed to use social media because it stunts their development. Okay, so stunts means reduces, it doesn't allow, it harms their development. So this person has a very clear main idea because they have a very clear topic sentence. Let's read on. It does this by reducing the amount of face-to-face interaction they have with their peers, and this prevents them from developing emotional skills such as empathy, teamwork, and self-awareness. So this is not a new idea, all right? This is a sentence that explains the main idea in the first sentence, and it's very clear how they've done that. So they're not thinking of as many ideas as possible. They just have one idea and then they're explaining that main idea. Now, if this is a real task 2 essay, I would go on even further and I would put another sentence in here. But for the purposes of a PowerPoint lesson, we can't fit everything in. We can't fit a whole essay in. So this is for demonstration purposes only. Then now let's look at their example. For example, the United States government is introducing new legislation which bans online platforms from targeting people under the age of 8 for this very reason. So they've linked their main idea to their example, and the example supports that main idea. So this is a far more coherent, cohesive paragraph where they've developed their main ideas, making it very easy for the reader to understand what they mean. The above paragraph is for demonstration purposes only. It's a little short for a main body paragraph. I couldn't fit it all into one PowerPoint slide. So don't start commenting, that's not long enough. I know it's not long enough. But what it's for is to demonstrate that you have one idea, you explain that idea, and then you use an example to support that idea. And if you do that, then you're going to make everything very clear, very concise, unambiguous, and it's going to help you improve your marks. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're not writing, 8 different ideas in your main body paragraphs and you're not developing any of those ideas. Explain your ideas, support your ideas with clear examples. Okay, so common mistake number 2, your position is not clear. So what does this mean? When you open the test paper, you'll see a question. What is the number one thing you must do? So when you see the question, what is the number one thing you must do? So in the comments, tell me what you think. What is the number one thing that you must do? Above all else. So there's many things that you must do, but if you had to just pick one, what is it? Answer the question. Pretty simple. You have to answer the question. Many of you might be thinking, oh, that's so obvious. Why am I wasting my time watching this? Well, if the reason why I'm stating that is the majority of new students that we get don't answer the question or have no idea how to do it. It seems that they think that they do, but they don't really know how. So you do this by taking a clear position on the question asked. So you take a clear position, what you think about the question asked. And your position, what you think about the question asked, should be clear throughout the whole essay. So let's look at some common questions. Do you agree or disagree? Discuss both views and give your opinion. Is this a positive or negative development? Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? What problems does this cause? What are the solutions to this problem? So here, this is not an exhaustive list. This isn't, the only questions that you'll get asked, but these are very common questions that you'll get asked in IELTS writing task 2. And when we're talking about position, what you think about each of these questions should be extremely clear to the reader, to the examiner. So if they're asking you, do you agree or disagree? They should be looking at your essay and it should be extremely clear whether you agree or disagree. That sounds really simple, but the majority of you do not do that or are not able to do that. Is this a positive or negative development? It should be extremely clear that you think this is a positive or a negative development. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? It should be extremely clear whether you think, yes, the advantages do outweigh the disadvantages, or no, they don't. You get the picture. All right. So what a lot of you do is you get lost in these structures that you find online and you think are the magic trick, the magic shortcut to getting the score that you need, or you start discussing everything at length and showing every single angle, but you never actually answer the question. For many of you, this isn't your fault. I've taught in many countries where it's within your culture or within your education systems that you don't take a clear position on things. But in the Western world, you do. We do this. And on the IELTS writing test, you should be taking a clear position on this. So what do you need to do? You should be able to hand your answer to a stranger and they should be able to read it once and understand your position on that question. So imagine this. Imagine you finish your IELTS writing task 2. You should be able to walk out of the examination center, walk out of the test center, find someone who speaks English, hand them your essay. They should be able to read it once, 2 minutes, read it in 2 or 3 minutes and understand exactly what you think, understand your position on that question. If you can't do that, something is obviously very wrong. If you can't pass that test, there's something very, very wrong with what you're doing. It sounds ambitious. It sounds like it would be a very, very difficult thing to do, but it's not that difficult. Remember purpose, what we talked about yesterday. What is the purpose of writing? Why do we write anything? To clearly communicate with the reader. If you focus on that, you focus on answering the question, taking a clear position on the question posed, and clearly communicating with the reader, you are way ahead of 99.99% of everyone else doing the test, because none of them do that. They do everything but that, and that's exactly what you need to do. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Let's look at a do you agree or disagree question. How do we take a position on this? How can we make our position clear throughout the essay? Because if you look at the official marking criteria, it states that your position should be clear throughout your essay. So how would we do this? So your introduction, you would say, you don't have to agree. This is just an example. All right, you might disagree, but let's say you agree with the point. I agree because X and Y. All right, X is my first idea, Y is my second idea. So your main body 1, here's what I think about X. Here's what I think about my first idea. Here's an explanation. Here's an example. Then we move on to main body 2. Here's what I think about Y. Here's what I think about my second idea. Here's an explanation of it. Here's an example. Let's move on to the conclusion. Here's a summary of all that. Here's a summary of everything I just talked about. So this is a very, very simplified version of the structure that I teach my students, the structure that we normally use. However, you can see that this person's position would be very clear throughout the essay. Please don't ask me 17 different questions about, can we do it this way or that way, or can we do this? There are many different correct structures, and there's not one structure to use. But the point of this slide is not to teach you a structure. The point of this slide is to show you how clear and easy it is to make your position very, very clear to the reader. And if you did that, again, you'd be way ahead of everybody else. Okay, so common mistake number 3. So the first one was developing your main ideas. The second one was making your position clear. And the third one, vocabulary. So every time I speak to an examiner, I ask them why they think students do not do as well as they should. So I know many examiners, many senior examiners, and every time I meet them, I'm kind of annoying because I'm obsessed with IELTS, and I'm obsessed between the difference between successful students and unsuccessful students. And I constantly speak to them about IELTS. They don't want to do that. It's kind of like speaking to a doctor about medical issues, or asking a chef to cook you a meal when they come around. I am very annoying when I speak to other examiners, but I can't help it. So I always say to them, what is the one thing? What's the one thing that students do wrong? What's the one thing that you find frustrating when you're correcting them, correcting the scripts? The most common answer is vocabulary. Okay. This is the thing that you can change today, and you can change it pretty quickly. It does take a while to improve your vocabulary, but it's instant. Change your mindset about vocabulary, and that is the most important thing that you want to do. Warning, what I'm going to tell you is completely the opposite to what most schools and teachers teach you. This is why it takes time for most students to accept this. Many of you will look at this advice that I'm about to give you, and you will have trouble with it. You will find it difficult, not difficult to understand, but many of you will disagree with it because it is completely the opposite to what most teachers have taught you, and that's difficult to accept. But when my students accept this, and it takes a long time sometimes, then they turn the corner and can get the scores that they need. So why is this such a problem? Well, number one, vocabulary is 25% of your total mark. People assume that all you have to do is show how impressive your vocabulary is, and you'll get a high mark. So when many people fail the test, what they do is they think, I need to go more complex, or I need to, the reason why I failed was because my language is too simple. So what I need to do is use more complex language. That's a rational thing to think, but it's wrong. However, you're not being judged on range alone. You're also being judged on accuracy. So you're not being judged on the complexity of your language alone. You're not being judged on the range of your vocabulary alone. You're also being judged on the accuracy of the vocabulary that you use. And this is where people get into trouble. So what will the examiner look for? Here are just some of the things that the examiners will be looking at when they look at your vocabulary. So one of the things that they won't be looking at is how many letters, or how big, or how impressive, or how rare the word is, really. What they'll be looking at is meaning. Did you use meaning correctly? Is it appropriate to use it? Style. word choice, word formation, spelling, collocations, grammar, appropriacy, and repetition and range. As you can see, there are quite a few things that you need to worry about. But what most of you do is just learn a long list of words that someone has told you that they're band 9 or high level, or I saw someone the other day on YouTube talking about diamond words. That's fine, but you have to know the meaning. You have to know the style. You have to know, is it the right word choice? How do you form those words? Is the spelling correct? Are the collocations correct? Is the grammar correct? Is it appropriate to use that within that sentence? If you don't know all of those things, you shouldn't be using that word. Put simply, the more mistakes that you make, the lower your vocabulary score. So if you're using lots of words that you don't understand, you're lowering your score. So I'll say that again. If you are using words that you are not 100% sure about, you are going to make lots of mistakes. If you make lots of mistakes, you're going to get a low score for vocabulary. Let's think of an analogy. So on the left, we have a nurse, a trainee nurse. So she's only been a nurse for 1 month. So no offense to nurses, or by the way, I know a lot of nurses are watching, but she's a trainee nurse. The person on the right is a brain surgeon. So she has 25 years of experience. She's one of the best brain surgeons in the world. What would happen if the brain surgeon turned around to the trainee nurse and said, I don't really feel like doing the brain surgery today. Can you just do it yourself? What would happen? She'd probably kill the patient. Because again, no offenses to the nurse or nurses watching, but obviously there's a huge gap in the knowledge that they have with regards to brain surgery. What many of you are doing is you are trying to use words and phrases you do not understand that are way above your capability, and what happens is you're killing your essay because it's just mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. If you get that, you're getting a band of 5 or 6 for vocabulary. And it also doesn't matter if you magically use a couple of words that are high-level words correctly. It doesn't matter because the rest of your words are probably, faulty, making lots of mistakes. So you need to get the basics correct first. So how to improve your vocabulary? So stick around till the end of the webinar today, and I'll be posting a link to my vocabulary improvement plan. Again, this is for those that showed up live. If you're watching the recording of this, please do not email me and ask me about this. This is for people who showed up live. Okay, so common problem number 4, grammar. So we're covering most things now. We've covered vocabulary, we've covered task achievement, coherence and cohesion. Now we're going to focus on grammar. A very similar problem occurs when teachers and students misinterpret the requirements for grammar. Grammar, again, is worth 25% of your total mark. So 50% of your mark is for grammar and vocabulary. If you're getting that wrong, do you think you're going to get a good score? No. There are many things to consider here, but essentially you will be judged on your range of grammar and your accuracy. So again, let's think about purpose. Why do we write anything? So what a lot of you do is you think that all I have to do to get a high grammar score is use as many different complex structures, as many different phrases, as many different tenses as possible, and I'll get a high score. So let's think of this. Imagine writing an email to your friend, and instead of writing to them to convey your message, which is what you're supposed to do, you decided you wanted to show them how many grammar structures, tenses, and complex sentences you know, even in your own language. So in your own language, imagine trying to write a simple email, but you have to use all the different tenses in your language. You have to use all the different structures. Would that be difficult to write? It would be extremely difficult to write. More importantly, would it be difficult to read? Which do you think would be easier for the person to read? An email where you focus on actually communicating clearly with the reader, or an email where you try and use as many different tenses and structures and complex sentences as possible? If you think it's the second one, you're wrong. So why do we write anything? The most important question should be, will the examiner be able to understand this? And am I answering the question? But many of you might be thinking, but what about range, grammatical range and accuracy? It's called grammatical range and accuracy. Surely if I don't use every single tense in the English language, I won't get a good score. So let's think about range for a minute. Think about the different things you might have to do when writing your task 2 answer. You'll be paraphrasing the question, you'll be stating your opinion, you'll be explaining your main points, you'll be discussing other people's opinions maybe, you'll be talking about causes, effects, results, consequences, you might be talking about the past, you might be talking about the present, you might be talking about the future. So if you're doing all of these things, do you think that range will be a problem? No, you will naturally use a range of different structures and tenses and complex sentences and simple sentences naturally just through writing the essay. Range will not be a problem. What is a problem for most of you, 99% of you, is accuracy. So the examiner will be looking for error-free sentences. So those that are at a band 7, 8, or 9, let's say you're focusing on a band 7 or 8 for grammar. What you need are error-free sentences. Error-free sentences are exactly how they sound. Sentences with no errors in them. No punctuation errors, no tense errors, no articles, no prepositions wrong. Everything is perfect. There are no grammatical errors. If you want a band 7 or 8, more than 50% of your sentences have to be completely error-free. Put simply, the more sentences you have with no errors, the more likely you are to get the score that you need. Obviously, this doesn't apply if you only write very, very basic one-clause sentences for your whole essay, but what you should be focusing on is not trying to use the most complex structures known to man. It should be focusing on clear communication and error-free sentences. And if you can focus on that, then you're going to be getting the higher marks. If you don't focus on that, again, much like vocabulary, where you're trying too hard and you're trying to do things that you're not capable of doing, that's going to lead to mistakes. If you make mistakes, you're getting a band 5 or 6 for grammar. So how to improve your grammar? So, number 1, first thing you need to do is identify your common grammar errors. So much like we used the analogy yesterday about if your car was broken down, you wouldn't just throw your car away. What you would do is you would take it to an expert and you would show them your car and they would identify the exact problems with your car. The same goes for your grammar. I don't know what mistakes you're making because I've not looked at your writing or heard you speaking, but everybody has 1, 2, 3, or 4 common grammar errors. So for example, Russian speakers have a big problem with articles because they don't have articles in their language. Other languages have problems with prepositions. Other people have problems with punctuation. Other people have problems with tense because they don't use tenses within their own language, well, not in the same way that the English language does. So everybody has particular problems with grammar. So the first stage is identifying yours. So, but that is very difficult without someone who knows what they're doing, who knows what they're doing, to tell you what those are. You might be able to do that yourself by recording yourself and listening back to yourself speaking and identifying your common mistakes, but it's obviously better to get an expert to help you with that. Number 2, learn the rules of that area of grammar to discover why you make this mistake. So each area of grammar is just a bunch of rules. That's all they are. Grammar is just a way of saying these are the rules of the language, the law of the language, if you like. So if you learn those rules, like let's say for articles, when do you use the? When do you use a? When do you use an? When do you use no article or zero article? There are very defined rules on when you use those words before a noun. If you remember those and if you learn those properly, then you're going to be able to use them. But it is about using them, so you have to practice. So again, it's not about memorizing stuff. You can't just look at a blog article that tells you all the rules of one area of grammar and then go and immediately start using that grammar properly. You have to practice using practice exercises, controlled practice, mini failures, reflecting on your mistakes and improving that. And then you can use it properly in a sentence, but reflecting on your work, looking at it, thinking about the mistakes that you're making, getting feedback on your work and helping yourself do that. And that gradual process will really, really help you. Okay, so 4 most common mistakes. So let's review what we've done today. What time is it? Just let me look. So that's 45 minutes. So that's pretty good. Okay, so 4 most common mistakes. Number 1, not developing main ideas. Number 2, position not clear throughout the essay. Number 3, too many vocabulary mistakes. And number 4, too many grammar errors. So if you can, these are not the only things, but these are the 4 most common ones. And tomorrow we'll look at 3 other mistakes that are the 3 most crucial ones, the ones that will have the biggest impact on your score. So if you can fix these and fix the 3 we're going to talk about tomorrow, then you are in a very good position to get the score that you need. So a little task just to activate the knowledge that you've learned today. Which of these things could you do better? So is there anything that you learned today? Is there anything that you had a misconception about? Did you think the opposite to what I was teaching you today? Or can you really see where you are going wrong? If you reflect on your own performance and you critically analyze your own writing, then that's the best way to improve. So it'd be great if you could put this into the comments. What did you learn today? Which of the things above could you do better? So what will we do tomorrow? We'll look at the 3 most crucial mistakes students make on the IELTS writing test. So these are the big ones. These are the ones that you really, really want. This is the most important lesson of the whole week. Yesterday was important. Today was very, very useful. Also, tomorrow is really important. It's also Friday, so it's my favorite day of the week. Can you tell me why in the comments? Why do you think this is my favorite day of the week? So it's not because it's Friday and I get off work, because I work 7 days a week. So I don't have weekends. But why do you think that Friday is my favorite day of the week? Put it in the comments. So I'll tell you why Friday is my favorite day of the week. It's IELTS results day. All right. So every Friday I get emails from people. I get messages from people. And especially it's great to see the members of my VIP group, my VIP course, getting the results that they need. So this means that we will have some of our successful students getting the scores that they need tomorrow. And this means that we're going to have available places on our VIP course. Many of you yesterday during the Q&A session were asking me about the VIP course. First of all, I don't want to turn this into a VIP marketing event. I don't want that to happen. So all I'm going to say to you guys now is there will be places available tomorrow. And what I'm going to do, to be fair to you guys, is I will only be making them available on the live webinar tomorrow. The live training tomorrow, at the end, I'll be giving you a special offer. And if you're interested, join us tomorrow. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so free gift. So I'll post the link in the comments. So let me get your 2 free gifts now. Okay, so here's one. Add a post. Okay, so vocabulary, improvement plan. There we go. And the case studies. Let me put this in here for you. Okay. So they're in the description, guys. And let me just copy this. I've just posted them in the comments as well. There you go. Okay, so please do not go crazy if you can't find the link immediately. Please don't fill the comments up with questions about free gifts. And please don't fill the comments up with questions like, how do I use a PDF reader? Or like, I was getting a lot of emails yesterday from people like wanting to know how to use a PDF. We are IELTS experts, guys. We want to help you with IELTS. We're not your personal IT assistants. Just please bear that in mind. Okay, questions. Any questions, guys? So what I'll do is I will answer any questions that you have for as long as I can. Doing one of these live lessons is very stressful and time sort of energy draining. So what I'll do is I'll answer the questions for as long as I can. So if you have any questions, just let me know. And I should be able to answer questions for about 45 minutes, an hour. But what I'll do is just keep as many, just do them until my brain stops working. So, but yeah, guys, another point, a number of you were emailing me yesterday with like IT issues. Like we are not your IT assistants. And if you're a member of like our VIP group or something and you have IT issues, obviously we're going to help you. But there's 15,000 of you. We're not going to help you with that. So any IELTS questions you have, feel free to ask, but not IT problems. So first question is Sharon Dip. I had an impression that using high-level vocabulary and idioms would help me get a high score. So Sharon Dip Kaur, yes, you have been given that impression by people who don't know what they're doing. So most IELTS teachers, most IELTS experts who call themselves experts don't really know what they're doing. So if you have someone who tells you use lots of idioms in IELTS Writing Task 2, run the opposite way from them. Because they are giving you the wrong advice. So yeah, a lot of this is about me trying to change your mind about habits that you have that are just incorrect. Abdul Basit, your opinion should be an introduction paragraph. Depends what question you're asking, Abdul, but your position, which is a little bit different from your opinion, should be in the introduction. Sidra, to what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? What to do in this case? Answer it in exactly the same way as do you agree or disagree? Dara, how much practice is essential if the IELTS test is just 1 month away? The answer to that question is different for every single person. Some people will require 10 minutes of practice a day. Some people will require 6 hours of practice a day. It's impossible to answer that question because I don't know anything about you. CJ Jeffro, in the question when we're asked to discuss both views and give our opinion, is it necessary to put our opinion in the body? So your position should be clear throughout the essay. That's what it says in the official marking criteria. So if your opinion is in the last line of the conclusion, then how is that clear throughout the essay? So that's the answer to that question. Carolina, how do you think I can improve my punctuation? In exactly the same way as I showed you that 4-step process. So step 1, you've already identified that's a problem area. Step 2, learn the rules of punctuation. Step 3, practice using those rules. And step 4, produce sentences and get feedback on them and improve in that way. Deepak, practicing grammar rules from a book is better, or writing an essay and noticing your grammar errors? Deepak, you should be doing both. Those are two separate things. There's a difference between controlled practice and production. Controlled practice is, like gap fills or multiple choice or stuff like that. Those are good when you're first just learning, but the next stage, the more advanced stage, is writing out full sentences, full paragraphs, full essays, and then getting feedback on your work and then improving in that way. Navpreet, I want to ask about task 1, general training. Do we put commas after dear sir? You can if you want, you don't have to. Niraj, what kind of training is better for IELTS classroom or online? Very good question. Well, it shouldn't be, should I study online or should I study in a classroom? Because some classrooms are great and some of them are terrible. And some online courses are great and some of them are terrible. So for the purposes of this question, I'll assume that both are pretty good. But think about this. Imagine Real Madrid or Barcelona came to play football against your local football team. What do you think the score would be? So Ronaldo and all his teammates come from Real Madrid to your local football team and play your local football team. Who do you think is going to win? So the world-class players or your local guys? That should answer your question about, should I go with my local school in my village or my town or my city, or should I go with one of the best online courses in the world, which have the best teachers, the resources, they know exactly what they're doing. They have many, 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 many hundreds, thousands of successful students. That should answer your question. Sophia, do we have to stick to one side only and agree or disagree? No, you can do it many different ways. The one thing that you need to understand is writing is not a mathematical equation. It is not paint by numbers. It is not fixed. It is not, there's only one way to do it. There are many correct ways of writing an essay. So let's say an agree or disagree one. You could agree, you could disagree, you could talk about both. They're one-sided or balanced. There are many different ways to do it. Pick the way that is easiest to learn and is most effective at getting the score that you need. And be very careful if you are talking to a teacher and they say there's only one way to write an essay, because there's not. They're trying to protect their own ego, protect their own, because they're not capable of saying, I might be wrong, or I'm not the only way to do things. Rashida, these mistakes are never highlighted by teachers in so much detail. Yeah, so there's a big reason for that, or two big reasons for that. Number one, most teachers don't know how to identify them because they don't know what they're doing. And number two, even if they do, they're not going to put in that level of work. When we are giving feedback to a student, we spend like at least 30 minutes on one essay because we correct every single grammar mistake, every single vocabulary mistake. We give advice about every single paragraph. We give them band scores, explain why those band scores, why they got them, how to improve, exactly how to fix it, all the mistakes. That takes a long time. So if you have a teacher who's getting paid by the hour, which most of them do, and you give them a load of extra work to do you think they're going to do it? Because they're working for free. So that should answer that question. Michael Banto, so you're saying when you're developing your main ideas, you need to ask yourself follow-up questions to expand your idea, to develop your idea. Yeah, so in your own head, you don't want to write those questions on the paper, but in your own head, think about like how it's going to be different for every idea and different for every answer. But basically, how and why are the two questions, or what, how, why, and what are the three questions you should be asking yourself. Lunetta, How can I get to know my essay writing is up to the mark? Get someone who knows what they're doing to look at it, and they'll be able to tell you. If the essay is discuss both views and give your opinion, how do I do that? So this is going to sound, I'll just say it. So the question is saying, discuss both views and give your opinion. So what do you think you have to do? You have to discuss both views and give your opinion. Right? Most people, when they get a discuss both views and give your opinion question, either don't give their opinion. That's very, very, very common. Or they discuss one side and don't discuss the other, or they just don't do any of those three things. There are three things that you have to do. So those are the things you should do. Let me see. The examples that I give in my task 2 writing, do they have to be authentic ones, or can I formulate ones? It's better to give authentic ones. That's why I suggest to all of my students that they should read the news every day. They should read about the common task 2 topics every day, so that will give them real examples. But if you're stuck, it's okay to make them up, but they have to be real, or they have to seem real. They have to be believable. I don't like telling students, yeah, just make stuff up, because when you tell students that, they make up stuff that just doesn't sound believable or plausible. So be careful with that. Aram, I'm awkward, scared of new topics. Then how should we react to such topics? You should read. The more you read, the wider your awareness of all these different topics are. So you should be reading the news every day. Look at the health news, technology news, government news, environment news, health news, all of these different things. And if you're reading for 10 minutes a day about these things, then there's not going to be any new topics coming up, because you will be aware of them. Good question. If we write 145 words for task 1 and 242 words for task 2, so you're under the limit, do we get 0 band score straight away? No, you'll not get 0, but you'll get a low band score, especially for task achievement. While writing, how do we give a strong comment statement about being in favor or against the idea? I don't really understand that question. I don't want to give an answer to a question I don't understand, Fatima. Maybe rephrase it or let me know what you mean. Hey Chris, should we use American or British English? You can use either. Either's fine, but try and be consistent. Suku, can you please give a brief coherence or brief? Can you please brief with coherence and I think you mean explain what coherence and cohesion are. So coherence means, is it clear? Is it easy to understand? So when someone's reading your essay, is your position clear? Is, the language clear? Is it easy to see what you mean or what you're talking about? Cohesion is talking about how everything is linking together. That doesn't mean linking words. That doesn't just mean using lots of cohesive devices. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And to do that, we'd have to get into talking about loads of different structures and showing you, demonstrating different essays and stuff like that. Obviously, I can't do that in a Q&A session. Could you help me do reading and get good marks? Yes, I can. But I only help students really on my VIP course. I've got a lot of free stuff that you can go and look at, but if you want me to help you personally, that's where the VIP course comes in. Yumna, I study with my own. Can I get a table to help me? Can I get a timetable to help me? What is your advice? No, I can't give you a timetable because I don't know anything about you. I don't know how many hours you have to study. I don't know when your test date is. I don't know what level you're at. I don't know your weaknesses. I don't know what you need to focus on. I don't know anything about you, so how can I create a study timetable for you? You need to treat, I don't treat my students as a group of people that are all the same. I treat them as individuals, and you need to think as yourself. You need to think of yourself as an individual when you're preparing something like that, because one person's timetable will be completely inappropriate for the next person. So it's about tailoring it for yourself. If there are any questions I don't understand, I'm just going to skip them. Can you please explain incorrect vocabulary with the help of a sample? I can't just pull up a sample here, but if you look at the list of the things that the examiner considers, so things like meaning, collocation, spelling, grammar, appropriacy, those would be typical errors. Christias Papas, do you prefer text reading or text scanning regarding a reading test? The big problem there is you are assuming that one thing helps you get a good score on the reading test. You're assuming, like, the worst thing that you can tell a student if you're a teacher is just use scanning or skimming and that will help you get a high score on the reading test. That's terrible advice, because every type of question is different. So a true, false, not given question requires different skills to a matching headings question. And then a short answer question requires different skills again. Sometimes you're skimming, sometimes you're scanning, sometimes you're close reading, sometimes you're only doing one or two of those things, sometimes you're doing one of those things first and then the other, sometimes you're doing a lot of one of those things and not much of the other. It's way more complicated than what most teachers will tell you is just skim and scan and then you'll get the answer. If that were true, then you wouldn't really need help, but you do. I couldn't finish my writing in 40 minutes. So I don't really know why that is. There are many, many reasons why that could be, but you need to identify what those reasons are. There are multiple reasons why you might be struggling. So it could be grammar, it could be vocabulary, it could be you're spending too much time on idea generation. It could be that you're not planning. It could be that you are not confident about what you're writing and you keep deleting it or keep going back. It could be that you're not aware of the different types of questions or how to answer those questions, or you don't have enough general knowledge. You see what I mean? There are many things that could be wrong. So you really need someone to help you establish what that is, and then you can work on that. So any questions that I don't understand or have been repeated, I'm just ignoring them, not because I'm rude or it's just for time reasons. I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. 4 advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Do we have to describe both the advantages and disadvantages? So if you do that, if it's do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, if you answer it, 1 paragraph advantages, 1 paragraph disadvantages, you're not really answering the question, because the question is, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So there are only 2 answers to that question. Yes, they do, or no, they don't. So unless you're answering it in that way, you're not really answering the question. So it's better to just say, yes, the advantages do outweigh the disadvantages, and here are the reasons why. And you will naturally talk about advantages and disadvantages either way when you're doing that. That's a very short answer to a complicated question. And I would like to give you more on that, but obviously in a short Q&A session, I can't. Farah, how can I increase vocabulary? There is a link in the comments. There's a link in the description to vocabulary improvement plan. Should we write T instead of true? Sorry for laughing. It's just I get that question nearly every single day. Do what the instructions tell you to do. All right. Many of you, and this is very clear from you guys not reading emails that I send out to you, like here's for example, the email could say, here's a time zone converter, and you reply, how do I convert the time zone, you don't read instructions. So especially for reading and listening, you need to read the instructions. So the instructions will tell you, write true, false, or not given. And if they want you to write TF or NG, they'll tell you that. So why not just read the instructions? Like I sent so many emails out this week. It's at 1 p.m. What time is it at? So anyway, will reading novels help to correct our grammar and vocabulary? Reading is the best way to improve your vocabulary. It also will improve your grammar. And you should read something you enjoy reading in English. So if you like cricket, read about cricket. If you like cooking, read about cooking. If you like novels about science fiction, read about that. The important thing is that you read, not what you read, it's just how much you read. So read whatever you want to read, and that will help you with your grammar and your vocabulary, but also just your writing as well. Could you cook something if you'd never seen something cooked before? So writing is like that. If you've never read anything before, how are you ever going to write anything? How to conclude, I agree or disagree. In conclusion, I agree for this reason and that reason. That's a very simplified version of it, but that's basically it. How to improve reading? Start off with reading. So how to improve listening? Listen. How to improve reading? Read. How to improve writing? Write. That sounds like a very simplified answer, but it's true. A lot of you say that, I really struggle with reading. And then if I ask you, when was the last time you read a book in English? Never. Okay, so there you go. Why is writing why do people get lower scores in writing? Because people don't write that much. So that's the answer to that question. Obviously, there's way more that I could help you with, and there's way more that I could offer you in terms of helping you with your reading. But that's the easiest question, or that's the most obvious answer and the best answer. If we totally agree with a statement, does it sound one-sided? Yes, but that doesn't matter. That's fine. Dovelet, very good question. Chris, do you think a person who got 8.5 in writing and 9 in all other modules are qualified to teach IELTS? No, they are not. The key word there, the verb teach. In order to teach something, you have to be a teacher. So I could take you down to my local pub, my local bar, and I could find someone and, train them in 1 week to be able to get a band 8 or a band 9 on the IELTS test. Would you want that person as your teacher who knows nothing about teaching? It's actually a massive problem now that lots of students who get an 8 or 8.5 or something like that on the IELTS test, and then the next week they're IELTS teachers. It's like, that's not the way it works. You are going to be in a lot of trouble if you follow someone like that. How to react to a new topic? I think you mean a topic that you've never seen before. There are going to be very, very, very few topics that you've never heard of before. If you are seeing topics that you've never heard of before, then it's probably because you're using fake questions. If you look at real IELTS questions, they're on topics like health, education, technology, the environment. If you don't know anything about those 4 basic topics, I don't really know what to say to you. You don't need detailed knowledge either. You just need a passing knowledge. But yeah, reading is really going to help with that. Reading the news every day. Grateful Riz, what is the best thing to do if you run out of ideas when writing essays? You're not going to run out of ideas because you don't have to think of an unlimited number of ideas. So, for example, an agree or disagree essay, you need 2 ideas. You should be able to think of 2 ideas. If you can't think of 2 ideas, the 2 possibilities. Number 1, you've got no education. I don't think that's applicable to anybody on this call. I don't think any of you have never been to school before. The other possibility is you're overcomplicating it. You think that it's more complicated than it needs to be. 99.999%, it's that. Don't overcomplicate your ideas. The most obvious, simple ideas are the best. You don't get extra marks for complex, complicated ideas. What time is it? Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to try and answer more questions. I'm going to try and go for about 15 or 20 minutes more. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to answer everybody's questions. What I'll do now is just pick the questions that I think would be the greatest benefit to everybody. Good question, Antonio. Simenchenko. What is the problem when you know grammar but you use it wrong? Okay, so the same with vocabulary, or same with learning structures or anything like that. The problem is that you think that you know it, but you don't really know how to use it. So there's a big difference between knowing something and using something. People who memorize stuff and people who think that they know stuff, that's in your short-term memory. People who are able to use stuff, that's in your long-term automatic memory. Think about how you think about grammar when you're speaking in your native language? Do you think about vocabulary when you're speaking in your native language? No, you don't, because you've used it so much that it's automatic. It's in your long-term memory. So Antonina, sorry. What you need to do is you need more practice, you need more feedback, and you need to understand at a deeper level what you're doing. And then that will become automatic. What should I do if I don't understand a word? Guess what it means. That's the only thing you can do. Look at the context around it and you'll be able to guess what it is. And don't worry if that happens. It happens to everybody. Harpreet, you're asking about how to use articles. I can't give you an articles lesson in a 2-minute answer. That's obviously a much bigger bigger explanation is required. So I can't really answer that question. But there are many online resources where you can find that out. How many percentage is task 2 writing cover overall? It's 2/3. Task 1 is 1/3 and task 2 is 2/3. A lot of people underestimate how important task 1 is, though, because they think of 1/3 and they think that doesn't really mean anything. It's massive. It is a massive impact on your score. According to you, what type of essay is asked frequently in the test? So that's an example of a question where the person is looking for a shortcut. They're looking to cheat the test. And people who do that, I don't work with people who do that. I don't answer their questions. So sorry about that. So, because basically, by having that mindset, that attitude where you're trying to cheat the test, you're going to fail because it doesn't really work. How do you analyze a question? Okay, so you want to start off more generally and think first about what is the general topic that you're looking at. So I'm assuming you mean task 2. So first of all, you want to think about the general topic, so that will help you orientate yourself towards the understanding the question itself. Then you want to go a little bit deeper and think about on a more micro level. So within that topic, what are the micro topics or the micro keywords? So the general topic might be, for example, the environment, but the micro topics, the more granular thing is air pollution. And then deeper in there itself, it could be air pollution caused by traffic congestion. So you're moving from general down more and more, going into the micro. Then what you want to do is you want to look at the instruction words. So what does the examiner want me to do? Do they want me to say if I agree or disagree, or discuss both views, or problems and solutions, or advantages and disadvantages? So if you think about it in that way, you'll be able to analyze any question pretty quickly. We want to know more about reading. I love it when students assume that they know what everybody else in a group of 15,000 people wants. What do you want to know about reading? Tell me more. How to respond to a new or unknown topic. How can we upgrade our vocabulary? There's a vocabulary improvement plan in the comments. I posted a link in the comments, and I posted it in the description of this video. What's the best way to plan ideas? So first of all, analyze the question first. So that's your first starting point during the planning process. You have to understand the question first before you can move on to the next stage. Then once you've understood it, then you can start thinking of ideas. Then when you've thought of your main ideas, then you want to think about how you would develop those main ideas. And then you want to do something called structure planning. So you have like a skeleton structure, and you want to populate your structure with those ideas that you've just thought of. So what you want is a roadmap, a plan of action that you can use to start writing. So then you're not worrying about anything other than writing when you start writing. What do you do if you get a very unfamiliar start? So what a lot of people do, what a lot of students do, is they're the type of people who, when they get on an airplane, think, what will happen if the airplane crashes? They think of the absolute worst thing that could happen, absolute worst scenario. That's not a really good way to live your life, because most people that will not happen to. What a lot of students do is, like, all they think about when they're going into the test is, what if I get something and I know nothing about it, and there's an earthquake and the test center burns down and I die? Like, if you go through your whole life thinking about the worst thing that could possibly happen, you're not going to have a very good life, and it probably won't happen. Most people have very, very boring lives, and routine happens. So focus on what matters, not what doesn't matter. Let me see, can I find another question? A lot of the questions are just repetitions of what I've already talked about, so I'm just trying to find a new question. A lot of the questions are also answered in the lesson, so I'm not going to answer those questions because I don't like repeating myself, and it's not a very good use of anybody's time. Okay, guys, like 90% of the questions I've answered already, and my brain is starting to turn into mush. So funny. Tanuja, hey Chris, literally there was an earthquake when I was taking my writing test. Okay, yes, that might happen. Thank you for proving me wrong. So there you go. All right, guys, my brain is starting to shut down. I can't answer any more questions. I'm really sorry if I didn't answer your question, but I'm human and I can only, focus for a certain length of time. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us. Join us tomorrow. It's the most important one tomorrow. And if you're interested in working with me further after tomorrow, I'll be giving you the opportunity to do that as well. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure teaching you, and I'll see you tomorrow. And bye-bye.